You're listening to the Out of Bounds Show, fueled by Fleetway Market. Whether you're on the road to the tailgate or headed up to hunting camp, stop by Fleetway Market to fuel up the car and the cooler today.
It's Jackson.
Are you ready? Yes!
Now live from the Whiskey 61 Lounge inside the Bank Plus studio.
You are listening to
Mississippi's #1 sports talk show, The Out of Bounds Show with Bo Bounds. Streaming worldwide live on the Out of Bounds radio app and on your radio at ESPN 105.9. The Zone.
Oh, good morning. Welcome in. Out of Bounds, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. Presented by Kessler Prime and the Renaissance. KesslerPrime.com to make a reservation. Four Roses small batch, single barrel. Great selection of wine. Recognized by Wine Spectator since 2001. And we'll go bone-in filet, side of mushrooms, and the bacon appetizer. KesslerPrime.com to make a reservation. Oh, we're taking Matthew. Matthew somewhat let us down. Our extraordinary intern from Ole Miss just walked in, and he had told us he was going to get to the Grove a little before noon on Saturday. He punted and did not get there until a little before 2 or 2. He claims because of weather, we said sometimes you got a double poncho. You just got to, you got to go get the duck boots and go all in.
Hot garbage.
So we're hoping, well, hold on, let me pull this up. Whatever Ole Miss's next home game is.
Arkansas.
Somebody's going to call the Hogs.
Look, this is that stretch, man. We've talked about this, and we're not quite there yet because they don't play it until next week. But this is after this off week.
Isn't that
this is
weird?
The stretch.
Ole Miss having an off week this early.
Kiffin was not happy.
Oh,
post game against Tulane, you could tell he was like, "I'm mad that we're not playing."
Yeah, no, it's a terrible time. As Bartu says, when you run the numbers, you do not want an off date. Now, Ole Miss may be just good enough to overcome it because they're so good on offense, but you don't want to buy in September.
No.
It's proven that it's just too many games to play in a row on the way out.
Especially when you're rolling.
Well, especially when you're rolling. I think that
thing.
was probably Kiffin's frustration is that he'd probably like to play 5 or 6
then
take a I don't know who did that schedule, Ross Bjork or Keith Carter. I know that Keith Carter is sitting pretty, though, because he made a hire that Ole Miss fans are just through the roof. I mean, Kiffin's on fire. They've won 4 in a row going back to the bowl game, and things look good. Now, I've got my Mississippi State listeners on the text line. You've got Ole Miss listeners talking about, hey, we're excited, da-da-da. MSU's like they have not played anybody. Yes, but that's who was on their schedule, and they blew everybody out. There is something to that. You have to tip your cap. You have to recognize that they controlled the game start to finish, and no one has come close to stopping them. Not even close. So we know that they're the number 1 offense in the country, and we'll see how that looks against Bama. Blake, 2:30 CBS. We knew it was going to be that, but Ole Miss at Bama. And then this weekend, CBS is Arkansas A&M in Arlington.
Yeah.
So that we go SEC West this weekend and next as far as CBS. They're going to be Arlington for the Aggies and the Razorbacks, who both MSU and Ole Miss will play. And then the next weekend in Tuscaloosa, you'll have the 2:30 CBS game with Ole Miss and Nick Saban. And next week, can you imagine how many times you'll hear about Lane working for Saban, Lane getting fired by Saban, Lane having to go to rehab at Alabama, and how that turned his career around and allowed him to take the Florida Atlantic job, which he parlayed back into the Power 5, and now at Ole Miss making $5+ million a year.
Can I give you some unfortunate news if you're a Mississippi State fan?
Do I need to go ahead and pour a Sam Adams Oktoberfest? Because last weekend was enough.
Yeah, well, joke's on you, buddy. So because you lost at Memphis, you now are staring a potential 4-game losing streak right in the face. Because if you do not find a way to defeat Ed Orgeron and the LSU Bengal Tigers this weekend, you then travel to College Station to take on A&M, whose offense is abysmal, but their defense is elite.
That's an L.
Then you have an off week.
Okay.
And then you get to host Alabama.
That's an L.
So if you do not find a way to win against LSU, most likely you're in the midst of a 4-game streak when you start that kickoff in Nashville against Vanderbilt in 5 weeks.
Oh, they'll be craving some Vanderbilt. Not that that's not a layup by any stretch. I mean, this team allowed La Tech to go on a 34-0 run and lost to Memphis. So to say that they're vulnerable and susceptible to just about anything is an understatement. So that's interesting. They'll be crawling to Nashville for a W if they don't win this weekend.
It shows you again in retrospect how huge this loss really was. Because if you're 3-0,
every game is precious in
Exactly.
football. We were having this conversation at lunch yesterday. Mississippi State, Matthew and Blake, got swept by Arkansas in baseball last year.
Correct.
You'd have thought it was the end of the world. You know what? At the end of the day, it didn't mean anything.
Meant nothing.
It meant nothing. It didn't change whether they were a national seed. Didn't change whether they were going to go to Omaha. Didn't change whether they were going to host. Nothing. Because you play so many games.
But you lose to Memphis, and that
Right.
changes everything.
Mississippi State and Ole Miss have had years in basketball where they dropped like 3 games in a row and still made the NCAA tournament. But the sky's falling in like January. Football is different, man.
Yep.
Every single one of these things you have to like hug, love, every game. And look, man, I understand why Mississippi State people are absolutely furious. I mean, 1, they should be furious at the Joe Moorhead tenure. 2, some of them are already bailing on Leach. I'm not even close to there yet. You don't have any high-end NFL talent on the team, and that's a major problem. As I said all summer, and people didn't want to hear it. Now, yes, Martin Emerson may go in the top 2 or 3 rounds, but other than that, that's it. I guess unless somebody takes a flyer on Charles Cross in the 3rd round or something, if he goes. But I mean like high in talent. I'm talking about guys that are drafted in the top 20 of the first round or top 40 like last year Elijah Moore for the New York Jets. There's just not that kind of juice on the squad. And so you didn't really know it was happening. Maybe some people will say it, Blake. But Moorhead burned the program down. And so now you got to build it back up. And it's not what you want to hear because you've got your rival that's hitting on all cylinders that's also gone through 3 coaches. And the question is, well, but they went through transition. Well, they did what they had to do in recruiting. You didn't. And it is what it is. I mean, you don't have anybody. You don't have a Dontario Drummond, a Neely, a Sanders, those offensive linemen. Is it Brocker?
Yep.
And those dudes. I mean, they're nasty. And Royce was phenomenal last year, and the list goes on and on. So that's where you are. That's not my fault.
Yeah, but fans don't like that. Fans want to be competitive.
But I tried to warn this summer about what the talent level really was. And it's way more tilted towards G5 than Power 5. See, Dan could get, you're not going to want to hear this. Mullen had the ability to take those 13 to 15 players on the roster that were good athletes, but more G5, and over time in the program, get them to where they were Power 5 contributors. Maybe not great, but he got every single ounce of talent out of them. And Moorhead wasn't capable of doing that. And then he missed on, how many units, how many position groups do you want to go with, Blake? Offensive line, defensive line, I guess safety. I don't know. We'll talk more about that on the other side and hit some other things. The text line's going crazy. 601-885-3776. Mike Detillier, 8:30 on the Modelo guest line.
You're listening to the Out of Bounds Show podcast, presented by Independent Roofing Systems. If you want it done right the first time, visit Independent Roofing Systems today.
All right. Good morning. Welcome in. Hope you're doing well. Show is brought to you by Burgers, Blues, and Barbecue. Honey butter chicken biscuit. I love saying that, and I don't know why. It's just, I feel like that could be like a sitcom or something. Honey butter chicken biscuit. They're serving breakfast at Burgers, Blues, and Barbecue. Now Madison Main Street. They've also got chicken and waffles and the hash brown bowl and so on. And I highly recommend trying that honey butter chicken biscuit. It is delicious. Should we get Matthew to go get us a few? It's a great idea. We'll do that in the next segment.
100%.
All right, cool. Out of Bounds, ESPN 1059 The Zone, WRKS. Good morning, good morning. Welcome in. Hope you're doing well. Blake Mania is with me. I'm your host, Bo Bounds. We'll have Mike Detillier, coming up in 15 minutes or so. Yeah, Mike Detillier at 8:30 on the Modelo guest line. So Blake posed a question that we're going to throw out to y'all today, and that is, why are there so many bad offenses in the SEC this year? Why are more teams not hitting on all cylinders? Georgia, I guess I give a little bit of a pass because JT Daniels is hurt.
But how did they not have a better quarterback on the roster?
It's a good point.
It's just like Alabama. If Bryce Young goes down, why do they not have more than one quarterback?
Boy, Bryce Young goes down.
Alabama.
You're talking about Ole Miss in the hunt for the SEC. They may already be. They may beat them next weekend, but if Bryce Young goes down, talking about a path to the Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's go through this again. You make a good point. Why does Georgia not have a really good backup? They're playing a walk-on by the name of Stetson Bennett IV. Auburn. I guess they don't have anything else other than Bo Nix. He was the only thing I can guess is we all grew up with guys who peaked in sports-wise. A lot of times we're bigger than everybody else, but maybe peaked in 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Shea Patterson. Mm-hmm. Bo Nix kind of was great by the time he was a sophomore in high school and was great as a junior and had all this buzz and so on. But, he's just a solid quarterback. So there's nothing special there. Now, LSU has all the stuff. I mean, if their offensive line gives Max Johnson just a little bit of time, they can throw for 350 plus a game, 400 a game, and they're 6, 7, 8 deep, including Deion Smith, who was at JA last year. True freshman at LSU, had 5 catches for 135 yards and 2 touchdowns over the weekend. That's not bad, I don't think, as a true freshman. So they've got the tools. And then A&M. A&M is, they're just kind of in no man's land with some young QBs, but a really, really good defense. But my question is, if we're doing cooler things at the high school level and parents want their kids to be quarterbacks or receivers, because that's kind of the fun mojo juice now. When I was a kid in 83, everybody wanted their kid to be a shortstop. I couldn't be because I was left-handed. So I caught the ball from the shortstop. I played first. But why don't you have better offense? I mean, South Carolina doesn't surprise me. Now, I do think Florida is just going to get better and better and better on offense. Ole Miss has the best offense in the conference, and then Alabama has the second best offense in the conference. And then I trust Florida more than LSU, even though LSU has a better group of receivers, because Dan Mullen, is so much better of a head coach than Ed Orgeron. And I trust Dan over Jimbo on the offensive side of the football. And I trust Dan over whatever Auburn's doing right now. Harsin may get it going. They may go with another guy in the next couple of years. And I trust Dan over what Georgia's doing, whether they had J.T. Daniels or not. Do you think there's any juice in Arkansas? I don't know what K.J. Jefferson out of the state of Mississippi will really be.
They're just talent deficient is the problem.
Yeah, under Kendall Browse, I think Kendall's trying to do a lot of cool smoking. I mean, he's kind of a Houdini magician. He's so smart. He's so talented on offense. He's doing everything he can there. And then, Kentucky, Vandy, and Missouri. Kentucky's shown some flashes, but they're not an offensive juggernaut by any stretch, right? Okay. So as I asked that question, you got more talented QBs coming out of high school than you've ever had.
More skill position players coming out.
More skill position
than
players than you've ever had. But I just took you through 4 teams that are considered, 2 of them are elite, 3 now with A&M are elite recruiters, and Auburn's just on the outside looking in. Georgia, Auburn, LSU, and A&M. I think the big question is why. Now, LSU, watch out. Because even if they have to throw it around the yard all year, they do have the capability of not having a great offensive coordinator, but they've got so much talent, and Max Johnson's talented, that they could generate offense throughout the season. Is that fair enough?
It's the one school you listed that has the ability that doesn't have the coaching. Almost all the other schools they don't even have the players there.
Right.
Right? So that's the difference. Like A&M, again, I go back to A&M. Jimbo's now in year 4. How is there not a junior quarterback on the roster that is talented enough to go put up more than 10 points against Colorado State?
I don't know. No, you talking about when they played A&M played Colorado?
Colorado, sorry. What did I say? Colorado State?
Yeah.
My bad. Colorado. It doesn't matter. Either one. It doesn't matter. They should put up 100 on both of them.
Sure.
It's the same thing with Stetson Bennett the 4th.
I lost that bet, by the way.
No shot at Georgia.
Bar2 liked it.
Yeah, no shot at Stetson Bennett the 4th at Georgia. If I could play quarterback, if someone says, "Hey, you get to start," I'm starting. It's not my fault.
Stetson Bennett the 4th, with all the playing time he has received the last 2 years when he shouldn't have,
he'll be the most lucrative insurance agent in the state.
He should be able to be a financial planner.
Yep.
Insurance salesman, stockbroker
Whatever
in the state of Georgia, just by the fact that he's going to end up with like 10 to 12 starts under his belt at the University of Georgia.
He'll be the next.
He couldn't start at Troy.
No, he'll be the next generation's Buck Bellew. He'll have a radio show and do some weird restaurant deals and just sit around and do nothing.
Or maybe he'll be
for 40 years
general manager of a super cool country club.
But
in Georgia.
The problem is, how is there no one on that roster? Again, not a shot at Stetson. How is there no one on the roster ready to play quarterback? Not a single person. That's incredible.
I know.
So where are the SEC schools missing? It has to be on the recruiting front. They're not recruiting the right quarterbacks. That's what I would say when I look around the league. Yeah. I mean, Max Johnson is finally getting the opportunity to play.
He's young. I'll give him.
I think he can be good down the road.
Yeah.
But where else do you see anyone who's poised to be the next guy?
Well, that's the question. Who is poised to be the next guy?
There's not one
at Georgia, Auburn, or A&M. At Florida, we feel good about. I think Anthony Richardson's going to be an absolute star.
Yep.
I think Dan Mullen and that offense is only going to get better under Emory Jones this year. Dan will just figure it out. They'll move the ball, blah, blah, blah.
But Jimbo's been at A&M longer. Ed Orgeron's been at LSU longer.
Calzada was also highly recruited. So he very, very, very talented young man coming out of high school. We'll see what he grows into. He's really young. But you make a good point. Why are we in this huge transition?
Yeah.
Maybe it's what one of our listeners said on the agup.com text line. Nobody will sit and wait behind a guy, so everybody transfers all over the place like crazy. But A&M has Haynes King. He's hurt. Calzada looked good last week, but they played New Mexico. I could have completed a pass against New Mexico last weekend. And then Auburn, they don't have another option, evidently, Blake, outside of Bo Nix. All right, we're going to preview the LSU-MSU game with Mike Detillier. So we got 23 minutes coming up. No breaks. We do that at 7:30, 8:30, and 9:30 for you. We're live in the Bank Plus studio. The show is brought to you by the Spray and Bedliners at Rick's Pro Truck. Detillier next. You can order award-winning Jonesy Q rubs and sauces at jonesyq.com. Use promo code OOBSHOW if you order $20 or more and receive free shipping. That's jonesyq.com. Promo code OOBSHOW.
The Out of Bounds Show is powered by the award-winning golf courses at Dancing Rabbit Golf Club in Philadelphia, Mississippi.
All right. SEC Insider Hit this morning brought to you by Sound and Communications, soundcomav.com. Soundcomav.com stands for audio and visual equipment. They'll design and install. They've done it in SEC stadiums, SEC arenas, and high schools, churches, businesses, you name it. They specialize in being the leader in your audio and visual equipment, video systems, school PA systems, and more. SoundComAV.com, Sound and Communications. We welcome in LSU Insider, WWL Radio TV New Orleans. He is Mike Detillier on the Modelo guest line. Well, here we go, Mike. LSU at Mississippi State. MSU is struggling to find their way on offense. And LSU looks like they may have found some things over the weekend. They can't run the ball, but it looks like they can sure throw it around. What are you seeing from this LSU offense as you go into Week 4?
Well, in the positives, Max Johnson has really played well. He's throwing the football, very confident, young man, very poised, and they're getting a lot of production out of the freshman. Deion Smith, number one ranked player in the state of Mississippi last year, came through big. Jack Besh, who's a flex tight end, wide out. And so that particular – and Brian Thomas Jr. also really struggled against McNeese. He dropped two real easy catches, but he came back, made some big plays against Central Michigan. So – they're getting that along with Keyshawn Butte, who he's a star player in college football today. So that part's the positive as far as that's concerned. They have not been able to run the football effectively, but I think you're going to see a lot more of Corey Kiner, the freshman, who rushed for over 70 yards last week against Central Michigan. So I do believe that the pitch and catch game has been fantastic for LSU past couple of weeks, and that's where they're going to kind of hang their hat on.
Okay. So Mississippi State, they don't have a star on the defensive line like they have for years. They rolled through Fletcher Cox, Chris Jones, and Jeffrey Simmons. That was about a 9-year window there. And so they don't have that type of player. How is the LSU – you've talked about the LSU offensive line. How are they pass blocking, Mike?
It's been okay. It's not been great, but it's been okay. It's better than their run blocking. They can't move people off the line of scrimmage at all. And so they've struggled in that category. No question about it. But it's been okay as far as pass protection, and Max move around pretty well. He's got his athletic skills from his mom, not from his dad, which means he can move pretty good. But again, it's just a struggle up front for them, and it's so surprising. And people in the offseason would tell me, well, they bring back 4 or 5 starters. Okay, the 4 starters they brought back, it was as soft as cotton last year. So what's the big deal? And the same issues that plagued them a year ago has hurt them this year in their inability to get a running game going. They've really struggled in that category. They struggled last year. It's the same thing this year. You see just a small improvement in the running game. But, again, I think you're going to see LSU play a lot of freshmen. And Ed told me this privately, and then he's admitted it over the last 2 weeks publicly. He thinks this is the best freshman class he's ever had. Ever.
Wow. Okay.
So that's pretty strong. He's had some pretty good freshman classes, in different places he's been, not only as a head coach, but also as an assistant. And when you see the impact they've had on offense, especially with the receivers and Besh at tight end, with Corey Connor at running back, you're going to hear a lot of Mason Smith, number one ranked player in the country with rivals as a defensive tackle. He has been playing inside, but now due to injury to Andre Anthony, they're going to move him out to defensive end. He's 6'5", 295-pound, 17-year-old. But he's a man. He had 3 sacks against McNeese, and he's a guy that you're going to hear a lot from. He is a big-time player. And, losing Andre really, man, you feel for him. He's 6 years.
Out of bounds, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN, trying to get a clean connection from Mike Detillier on the Modelo guest line, WWL Radio TV New Orleans, at Mike Detillier on Twitter. So Deion Smith, freshman wide receiver, had a monster weekend for LSU out of Jackson. And Corey Connor, freshman from LSU, led them in rushing. And that's what Mike was referencing as far as Ogeron talking about that class. For some of them, it will be, for, a chunk of those players, it'll be their first big road game. I know they went to UCLA, but UCLA doesn't pack it in. And, Mississippi State, although they could have had a bigger crowd with the different time slot, 5 in the afternoon or so, and with the win over Memphis, it'll still be a loud stadium. I know that the weather's supposed to break a little bit today or Wednesday, but then it looks like it may be shooting back up. 11 a.m. game either way, though, in Stark Vegas, Mississippi. So, will the crowd have an impact? It could. Student section's been wild in Starkville the first 2 weekends. And they had a nice crowd. I think they'll probably take about a 5,000-person hit, I think, because of the Memphis debacle. And so it could have been a little bit louder. But we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people pack it in. It is tougher to get to an 11 a.m. game, obviously, when you're driving in from out of town. For those that have places to stay, it's not that big a deal. Out of bounds, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN, brought to you by Sound and Communications, SoundcomAV.com, SoundcomAV.com, the leader in audio and visual equipment for your business, for your church, and for your sports facilities. We welcome Mike Detillier back in to the show on the Modelo guest line. All right, Mike, let's flip it. The LSU defense, Mississippi State's struggling on offense. They can't run the ball either. And they're throwing it a little bit, but it's a lot of dinking and dunking. They've got a young quarterback that they think can be good, but they haven't really pushed it down the field as much as they maybe would like to. Tell me about this LSU defense to date so far.
Other than game one, they've really gotten after the quarterback. They got some athletes up front, really, really do. And Ali Gay, who's considered their best defensive end, only played in the UCLA game. He hasn't played the last couple of weeks. He'll probably play against Mississippi State. They did lose Andre Anthony, who was a really good football player. They lost him for the year. So they've moved the freshman Mason Smith from defensive tackle to defensive end. And so it's a unit with a lot of talent, and they got a lot of depth. And it's really the strength of their football team. Ed Stobie, it's the best defensive line he's ever had anywhere. They're that good. So that's been the strong point of this football team. And Stingley looks as though he's played his way back into shape, and he was really good last week against Central Michigan. You saw the All-American. And, you got Elias Ricks on the other side. The thing that has given them problems have been those crossing routes and maybe some miscommunication, which we saw last year against Mississippi State, gave them fits. But this unit has really played well, other than game one against UCLA, where they seemed lethargic, but they played a lot like LSU football the past couple of weeks, and being able to converge to the ball carrier and also put a lot of heat on the quarterback.
Woo! All right, so it's a close line. That may not mean anything. You think blowout LSU, or you expect a close game in Starkville?
I don't think LSU is going to be in a lot of blowouts. I'll be honest. I just think when you can't run the football, Bo, you can't control the clock. I don't see them. This isn't 2019. So, I think LSU wins this game, but it's not going to be a blowout by any stretch. They're not built that way, to be honest with you. They're just not. And so we've seen some improvements, especially on defense. And those young freshmen now, their deal is, man, you ain't better than me, and I'm taking over. So you do have an explosive wide receiver tight end situation. And Max Johnson has really been underrated for what he's done here. And still a young puppy quarterback. Only started a couple games last year, a couple games this year. But, man, he's put up some big numbers. And he's playing with a lot of poise, a lot of confidence. Again, you see the weaknesses of offensive line, not being able to run the football. And at times, there's still some confusion in the secondary. But this LSU defense, it looks to have turned the corner. And that's going to keep them in a lot of games and help them win games.
Okay. Mike Detillier on the Out of Bounds Show. Mike, let's go to how about Ole Miss? And how about that offense that Lane Kiffin's got tuned up? I think it's the best offense in the country. I think they're better than Bama, A to Z. And Oklahoma's down. Clemson's down. Ohio State's kind of in a weird spot. I think it's the best offense in the country. What did you see on Saturday night or the last 3 weeks from Ole Miss?
Well, it's the perfect storm. And you got the right scheme with the right quarterback. They've been able to protect Matt. You got a running game going. It's rolling. And, one thing with Lane, and Coach O and I talked about this a lot. He's like, Mike, he is really so good in finding the weak spot on a team, and then he doesn't just go after it every once in a while. He goes after it until he breaks the chain. And that's what you're seeing here. And I go back to Manning camp here and getting to talk to Matt Corral and spending some time with him. And his thing, listen, I need to improve as a passer. I know last year I was confused at times. It was maybe too complicated for me. But now he said, I get it. I'm trying to stay away from the turnovers as much as I can. But I think Matt's always going to be a little bit of gunslinger type player. But he said, all I want to do is find a way to win. And he said, well, we have offensively, we can win. And he was the first one to say it. We're going to be a lot better on defense than people are talking about. He said, I'm just telling you, we're going to be a lot better than what people think. And so with that type of offense, man, you better be able to put up some points and fast, because they're going to hit you with the football tsunami. And right now, he's playing as well as any player in college football.
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
He's playing as well as anybody.
Well, I'm watching Spencer Rattler, some other guys. I have not watched a better quarterback this year in college football. And I think he's going to play himself into a top 5, top 10 pick. How do you see it?
I don't know about top 5, top 10, but he's played his way into round 1. Because we still have a lot left to go into the season. But if there was any questions, and there were, because, somehow, some way, these NFL scouts, they sneak into the Manning camp to take a peek. But, most of them was, I don't know about first round. And when I brought it up to Matt, he was like, hey, it'll just play out. It'll just play out. I think he's played his way into round 1. There's no question about it as a player. And we've seen these meteoric rises from players. We saw it from Kyler Murray, okay? And he went from a baseball player, to be the first pick in the draft. So Joe Burrow, nobody had Joe Burrow in round 1 to start the 2019 season. No one. They lying to you if they tell you they did. Lying to you. No one had him. Becomes the top overall pick in the draft. Matt's on that ascension to do it. I'm just telling you, he's got a shot to continue that rise up the draft boards. And, again, his play has to continue at that high level. But, man, everything I've seen has been super positive for Matt Corral. And, man, he gets it now. And I understand with a new offense, sometimes that becomes overwhelming. But he gets it, and he has stayed away from what was the Achilles heel for him, and that was the costly turnover. Mm-hmm. And physically, he's going to get stronger as he matures and gets older.
No
he's
question.
Physically going to be a stronger player, and so it'll help him with the deeper passes.
What was your takeaway from all right, so they play in 2 weeks. What was your takeaway from I was impressed that Florida outscored Alabama 26-10 the last 3 quarters. Alabama got up on them early, but Florida made them uncomfortable. What was your takeaway from Bama, Florida, Mike?
That thing goes in overtime. They've really been uncomfortable. Alabama's defense struggled. They struggled to cover the pass. They struggled to stop the run. They had difficulties, and Florida wasn't doing anything out of the ordinary. And, you watch the first quarter of that game, boy, you say, man, this is going to be a blowout. And all of a sudden, man, Florida starts to just keep hammering them. And Alabama's front 7, they had some real difficulties handling the blocking scheme and the running of Florida. And then when you threw the football, those receivers weren't just a little open. They were really open. Man, that's got to be a little bit concerning. And you understood it a year ago when Florida played Alabama. Okay, Kyle Trask, if you protect him, he can hum it. And you did have Pitts. You did have a first-round pick a wide receiver. You look at that Florida team today, it's totally different on offense. And they gave Alabama everything they wanted, everything. And so, then it was surprising to me of Alabama's defense sort of crumbled of the last 3 quarters, had no kind of chess play to what Florida was doing offensively. There's confusion. There was missed assignments, missed tackles. And you could see the communication in the secondary, guys looking at one another. Like, were you supposed to get him or was I, you don't see that often from Alabama coach teams. Mm-hmm. It's rare that happens. And, man, that certainly opens the door for you playing a team that's going to come after you. Did Alabama show you a great pass rush?
No.
Okay, then how are you going to stop Corral?
Egg.
If you can't manufacture a pass rush on him, you're in trouble. You're in a lot of trouble. And so that has to be the biggest concern for Nick Saban, that Ole Miss is going to throw it. And you got to get to Matt to affect his launch pad. They didn't do that against Emory Jones. Did not. And so that to me is the biggest concern. They didn't stop the run, and I think you can get better with that part of the game. But the fact that you don't have this ace pass rusher or a pass rush, I think is concerning to Nick, knowing who he's got to go up against.
Interesting.
And they had him last year for a while.
Yeah.
They had him on the ropes last year. It's just their defense was so bad they couldn't stop them. They just couldn't stop Alabama offensively. But, you look at the numbers last year of what Ole Miss did against that defense. Man, they moved the football up and down the field.
They did. They did.
And there was a lot more talent on that Alabama defense last year than there is this year.
We'll leave it there. Mike Detillier, LSU at Mississippi State. LSU should win the game, but I can tell you this, Ed Orgeron cannot afford to drop a game. LSU fans do not believe they should ever lose to MSU. And so I think LSU will win the game, but the last thing that Orgeron can afford to do is – and Mike thinks it's close. I don't know. I'm going to have to continue to think about it throughout the week. But Mike D., WWL Radio TV New Orleans, on the Modelo guest line. Have a super week, Mike. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you, Bo. Appreciate it.
He's Mike D., and he's awesome. Brought to you by SoundcomAV.com. Sound and Communications, your AV system for businesses, churches, sports facilities, high school stadiums, JUCO, gymnasiums, arenas, you name it, amphitheaters, soundcomav.com, and, of course, conference rooms and hospitals and so on. The leader in audio and visual equipment, soundcomav.com, sound and communications. We're live in the Bank Plus studio, Out of Bounds, 105.9 The Zone. Our Bank Plus player of the week was Davis Dalton from Madison Ridgeland Academy. He had, I was told 9, I think it was 8 catches for 177, 3 touchdowns. He had a couple of punts that he punted, and they were downed inside the 5. Fantastic player for MRA. He is committed to Southern Miss, and he has other offers, and he really lit it up on Friday night against JA. So the Bank Plus, Friday Night Lights, Mississippi High School Player of the Week is Davis Dalton, wide receiver / punter at MRA, who had 177 yards receiving, 3 touchdowns, and dropped 2 punts inside the 5. I'd say that's a pretty good night in any level of football, but especially high school football. I don't think we ever had anybody catch 177 yards worth of – have 177 receiving yards when I was in high school in a season.
I believe that.
In a season. Not in a game. How things have changed, and those coaches that are throwing it, man, it's a different deal. I'm telling you, man, when you got 9 to 11 players touching the ball on Friday night, kids want to play. They want to play there, and more of them want to not only come out and stay out for a sport that is obviously, physical and grueling and brutal, and you don't get to play as much, right, as basketball and baseball. But if you make it fun and 9, 10-plus players touch the football just on offense on Friday night, it's a game changer. If you'd like to schedule a private tour of Madison Ridgeland Academy, call today, 601-856-4455. Out of Bounds and Friday Night Lights, powered by MRA on ESPN 105.9 The Zone.